Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Let's do some Radha Jap. Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha. We are reading Bhagwat Geeta as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We are in chapter 18. We came so far. 47 हो गया. Text 47. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. Let's read the purport. One's occupational duty is prescribed in Bhagwat Geeta. As already discussed in previous verses, the duties of a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra are prescribed according to their particular modes of nature. One should not imitate another's duty. A man who is by nature attracted to the kind of work done by Shudras should not artificially claim to be a Brahman, although he may have been born into a Brahman family. In this way, one should work according to their own nature. No work is abominable if performed in the service of the Supreme Lord. The occupational duty of a Brahman is certainly in the mode of goodness. But if a person is not by nature in the mood of goodness, he should not imitate the occupational duty of a Brahman. For a Kshatriya or administrator, there are so many abominable things. A Kshatriya has to be violent to kill his enemies, and sometimes a Kshatriya has to tell lies for the sake of diplomacy. Such violence and duplicity accompany political affairs, but a Kshatriya is not supposed to give up his occupational duty and try to perform the duties of a Brahman. Correct? One should act to satisfy the Supreme Lord. For example, Arjun was a Kshatriya. He was hesitating to fight the other party. But if such fighting is performed for the sake of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there need be no fear of degradation. In the business field also, sometimes a merchant has to tell so many lies to make a profit. If he does not do so, there can be no profit. Sometimes a merchant says, "Oh, my dear customer, for you I am making no profit." But one should know that without profit, the merchant cannot exist. Therefore, it should be taken as a simple lie if a merchant says that he is not making a profit. But the merchant should not think that because he is engaged in an occupation in which the telling of lies is compulsory, he should give up his profession and pursue the profession of Brahman. That is not recommended. Whether one is a Kshatriya or Vaishya or Shudra doesn't matter if he serves by his work the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even Brahmins who perform different types of sacrifice sometimes must kill animals because sometimes animals are sacrificed in such ceremonies. Similarly, if a Kshatriya engaged in his own occupation kills an enemy, there is no sin incurred. In the third chapter, these matters have been clearly and elaborately explained. Every man should work for the purpose of yajna or for Vishnu. the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anything done for personal sense gratification is a cause of bondage. The conclusion is that everyone should be engaged according to the particular mode of nature he has acquired, and he should not decide to work only to serve the supreme he should decide to work only to serve the supreme cause of the supreme Lord. Yes. Text 48. Every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of fault. Yes, let's read the purport. In conditioned life, all work is contaminated by the material modes of nature. Even if one is a Brahman, he has to perform sacrifices in which animal killing is necessary. Similarly, a Kshatriya, however pious he may be, has to fight enemies. He cannot avoid it. Sorry. Similarly, a merchant, however pious he may be, must sometimes hide his profits to stay in business, or he may sometimes have to do business on the black market. These things are necessary, one cannot avoid them. Similarly, even though a man is a Shudra serving a bad master, he has to carry out the order of the master even though it should not be done. Despite these flaws, one should continue to carry out his prescribed duties, for they are born out of their own nature. A very nice example is given herein. Although fire is pure, still there is a smoke. Yet smoke does not make the fire impure. Wow. Even though there is smoke in the fire, fire is still considered to be the purest of all elements. If one prefers to give up the work of a Kshatriya and take up the occupation of a Brahman, he is not assured that in the occupation of Brahman there are no unpleasant duties. One may then conclude that in the material world, no one can be completely free from the contamination of material nature. This example of fire and smoke is very appropriate in this connection. When in winter time one takes a stone from the fire, sometimes smoke disturbs the eyes and the other parts of the body. But still, one must make use of the fire despite disturbing conditions. Similarly, one should not give up his natural occupation because there are some disturbing elements. Yeah. Rather, one should be determined to serve the Supreme Lord by his occupational duty in Krishna consciousness. That is the perfectional point. When a particular type of occupation is performed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, all the defects in that particular occupation are purified. When the results of work are purified, when connected with devotional service, one becomes perfect in seeing the self within, and that is self realization. Wow. So basically, don't compare yourself with others. Just keep doing what you like to do. Okay, let's move to text 49. One who is self controlled and unattached and who disregards all material enjoyments can obtain by practice of renunciation the highest perfect stage of freedom from reaction. Yes. Let's read the purport. Real renunciation means that one should always think himself part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and therefore think that he has no right to enjoy the results of his work. Since he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, the results of his work must be enjoyed by the Supreme Lord. This is actually Krishna consciousness. The person acting in Krishna consciousness is really a sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life. By such a mentality, One is satisfied because he is actually acting for the Supreme. Thus, he is not attached to anything material. He becomes accustomed to not taking pleasure in anything beyond the transcendental happiness derived from the service of the Lord. A sannyasi is supposed to be free from the reactions of his past activities, but a person who is in Krishna consciousness automatically attains this perfection without even accepting the so called order of renunciation. This state of mind is called Yoga Rudha, or the perfectional stage of Yoga. As confirmed in the third chapter, Yastva Atma Ratir Eva Syat. One who is satisfied in himself has no fear of any kind of reaction from his activity. Let's move to text 50. O son of Kunti, learn from me how one who has achieved this perfection can attain to the supreme perfectional stage, Brahman, the stage of highest knowledge, by acting in the way I shall now summarize. Okay, let's read the purport. The Lord describes for Arjun how one can achieve the highest perfectional stage simply by being engaged in his occupational duty, performing that duty for Supreme Personality of Godhead. One attains the supreme stage of Brahman simply by renouncing the result of his work for the satisfaction of Supreme Lord. That is the process of self realization. The actual perfection of knowledge is in attaining pure Krishna consciousness that is described in the following verses. Let's move to text 51 to 53. Being purified by his intelligence and controlling the mind with determination, giving up the objects of sense gratification, being freed from attachment and hatred, one who lives in a secluded place, who eats little, who controls his body, mind, and power of speech, who is always in trance, and who is detached, free from false ego, false strength, false pride, lust, anger, and acceptance of material things, free from false proprietorship, and peaceful. Such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self realization. Wow. Let's read the purport. When one is purified by intelligence, he keeps himself in the mode of goodness. Thus, one becomes the controller of the mind and is always in trance. He is not attached to the objects of sense gratification and he is free from attachment and hatred in his activities. Such a detached person naturally prefers to live in a secluded place. He does not eat more than what he requires, and he controls the activities of his body and mind. He has no false ego because he does not accept the body as himself, nor has he a desire to make the body fat and strong by accepting so many material things. Because he has no bodily concept of life, he is not falsely proud. He is satisfied with everything that is offered to him by the grace of the Lord, and he is never angry in the absence of sense gratification. Yes, that's why we must always remain in gratitude for whatever we have today. Even this thing, this life itself, we need to be grateful to the Lord that we have this kind of life. Nor does he endeavor to acquire sense objects. Thus, when he is completely free from false ego, he becomes non attached to all material things, and that is the stage of self realization of Brahman. That stage is called the Brahma Bhuta stage. When one is free from the material conception of life, he becomes peaceful and cannot be agitated. This is described in Bhagwat Geeta 2.17. I'm reading the translation. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enters like rivers into the ocean, which is never being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Yes. Let's move to text 54. One who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed towards every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. Yes, let's read the purport. To the impersonalist, achieving the Brahma Bhuta stage, becoming one with the Absolute, is the last word. But for the personalist or pure devotee, one has to go still further to become engaged in pure devotional service. This means that one who is engaged in pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord is already in a state of liberation called Brahma Bhuta, oneness with the Absolute. Without being one with the Supreme, the Absolute, one cannot render service unto Him. In the Absolute conception, there is no difference between the served and the servitor, yet the distinction is there in a higher spiritual sense. In the material concept of life, when one works for sense gratification, there is misery. But in the absolute world, when one is engaged in a pure devotional service, there is no misery. The devotee in Krishna consciousness has nothing for which to lament or desire. Since God is full, a living entity who is engaged in God's service in Krishna consciousness becomes also full in himself. He is just like a river cleansed of all dirty water. Because a pure devotee has no thought other than Krishna, he is naturally always joyful. He does not lament for any material loss or aspire for gain because he is full in the service of the Lord. He has no desire for material enjoyment because he knows that every living entity is a fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and therefore eternally a servant. He does not see in the material world someone as higher and someone as lower. Higher and lower positions are ephemeral. Ephemeral. What is ephemeral? Okay. We just check. Ephemeral meaning. Yeah. Lasting for a very short time. Okay. So he does not lament for any material loss or aspire for gain because he is full in service of the Lord. He has no desire for material enjoyment because he knows that every living entity is a fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and therefore eternally a servant. He does not see in the material world someone as higher and someone as lower because higher and lower positions are ephemeral and a devotee has nothing to do with ephemeral appearances or disappearances. Yes. For him, stone and gold are of equal value. This is the Brahma Bhuta stage, and this stage is attained very easily by the pure devotee. In that stage of existence, the idea of becoming one with the Supreme Brahman and annihilating one's individuality becomes hellish. The idea of attaining the heavenly kingdom becomes phantasmagoria. Sorry, phantasmagoria. This phantasmagoria, I had just checked the meaning. Word is used second time. Phantas. Didn't even know such words existed in English. Phantasmagoria. It means a sequence of real or imaginary images like that seen in a dream. Yes. The idea of attaining the heavenly kingdom becomes phantasmagoria, and the senses are like serpents whose poison teeth are broken. As there is no fear of a serpent with broken teeth, there is no fear from senses when they are automatically controlled. The world is miserable for the materially infected person, but for a devotee, the entire world is as good as Vaikunth or the spiritual sky. The highest personality in this material universe is no more significant than an ant for a devotee. Such a stage can be achieved by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, who preached pure devotional service in this age. Yes. Let's move to text 55. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. Let's read the purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and his plenary portions cannot be understood by mental speculation nor by the non devotees. If anyone wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has to take to pure devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee. Otherwise, the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead will always be hidden. As already stated in Bhagwat Geeta 7.25, Nahim Prakasha Sarvasya, he is not revealed to everyone. No one can understand God simply by erudite scholarship or mental speculation. Only one who is actually engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service can understand what Krishna is. University degrees are not helpful. One who is fully conversant with the Krishna science becomes eligible to enter into the spiritual kingdom, the abode of Krishna. Becoming Brahman does not mean that one loses his identity. Devotional service is there, and as long as devotional service exists, there must be there must be God, the devotee, and the process of devotional service. Such knowledge is never vanquished even after liberation. Liberation involves getting free from the concept of material life. In spiritual life, the same distinction is there, the same individuality is there, but in pure Krishna consciousness. Wow. One should not mistakenly think that the word vishas, vishate means into me. Supports the monist theory that one becomes homogeneous with the impersonal Brahman. No. Vishate means that one can enter into the abode of Supreme Lord in one's individuality to engage in his association and render service unto him. For instance, a green bird enters a green tree, not to become one with the tree, but to enjoy the fruits of the tree. Impersonalists generally give the example of a river flowing into the ocean and merging. This may be a source of happiness for impersonalists, but the personalist keeps his personal individuality like an aquatic in the ocean. We find so many living entities within the ocean if we go deep. Surface acquaintance with the ocean is not sufficient. One must have complete knowledge of the aquatics living in the ocean depths. Because of his pure devotional service, a devotee can understand the transcendental qualities and opulences of the Supreme Lord in truth. As it is stated in the 11th chapter, only by devotional service can one understand. The same is confirmed here. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by devotional service and enter into His kingdom. After attainment of the Brahma Bhuta stage of freedom from material conceptions, devotional service begins by one's hearing about the Lord. When one hears about the Supreme Lord, automatically the Brahma Bhut stage develops and material contamination, greediness, and lust for sense enjoyment disappears. As lust and desire disappear from the heart of a devotee, he becomes more attached to the service of the Lord, and by such attachment, he becomes free from material contamination. In that state of life, he can understand the Supreme Lord. This is the statement of Srimad Bhagavatam also. After liberation, the process of bhakti or transcendental service continues. The Vedanta Sutra 4.1.12 confirms this. Prayanat prayanat tatrapi hi drashtam. This means that after liberation, the process of devotional service continues. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, real devotional liberation is defined as the reinstatement of the living entity in his own identity, his own constitutional position. The constitutional position is already explained. Every living entity is a part and parcel fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, this constitutional position is to serve. After liberation, this service is never stopped. Actually, liberation is getting free from the misconceptions of life. Yes. Let's let's just finish 56. This is a small one and then we will end. Text 56. Though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee, under my protection, reaches the eternal and imperishable abode my by my grace. Yes. चाहे तुम कितनी भी मेहनत कर लो टीचर ही मार्क्स देगी तो ग्रेस तो चाहिए भगवान का. Let's read the purport. The word mad vyapashrayah means under the protection of the Supreme Lord. To be free from material contamination, a pure devotee acts under the direction of the Supreme Lord or his representative, the spiritual master. There is no time limitation for a pure devotee. He is always 24 hours a day, 100% engaged in activities under the direction of the Supreme Lord. To a devotee who is thus engaged in Krishna consciousness, the Lord is very, very kind. In spite of all difficulties, he is eventually placed in the transcendental abode or Krishna look. He is guaranteed entrance there. There is no doubt about it. In that supreme abode, there is no change. Everything is eternal, imperishable, and full of knowledge. Let's end here with Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Let's do some Radha jap. Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha. Awesome.